Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. And my goodness, we are all over the world on this call. Welcome to Coaching Done Well. Now, I know we are live streaming on this, and we've got some people already joining us on LinkedIn. I think maybe even a few people on Facebook. Welcome if you're joining there. But you might just be listening in afterwards on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, in which case it is lovely to have you join us. I'm Shane Leaning. I'm based in Shanghai, and my co-host is the wonderful Jim Thompson. How are you doing, Jim?
Well, very fine, Shane. We're just blessed to have these iconic figures in coaching with us today. And I'm reporting from cold and dreary and windy upstate New York. So glad to be with you, good folks.
I am feeling, as they say, well gel at the minute because Jim Thompson has got hold of something particularly special, and we're surrounded by superstars on the call. We've got John Campbell and Chris Munro. I wonder if I could hand over Chris to you first. Would you kind of give us a bit of an introduction, even though you need none because you have been on the podcast before?
Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Jim. It's a pleasure to be here. Yes, so I've been here before. I think last time we had some tech issues too. But yes, so my day job, my main role is as COO, Chief Operating Officer for Growth Coaching International and Instructional Coaching Group operations in Australia and Asia. So I oversee the joint organisations work in this region. And an exciting time just now because John and I are now authors as well, but we're going to say something about that as we go.
Well, thanks so much, Chris. And how about you, John? Just give a quick intro.
Yeah, hi Shane, Jim, and good to be here. I'm actually in Omaha, Nebraska this morning, and that's a good place to be. First time I've been here. I'm actually visiting the campus of the university here, which is partly what I'm doing now. So a bit of study and a role in continuing to support the work of ICG and GCI. So wearing those two hats at the moment.
That's incredible. Well, what an absolute honor to have you both here. Jim, are you feeling as giddy as me today?
I am, and if I may have the power to try, I'd like to try to hit two birds with one stone on this first question. We always ask our guests, what does coaching done well look like, sound like, and feel like to the coach and coachee? But I'd also like the opening question, because we've got these great people here. As you respond to that question about coaching done well, I want to steal that Michael Bungay Stanier question. What was on your mind to get this book launched? So if you could, we could hear from each of you about a quick look at what coaching done well looks like and sounds like, and maybe a sneak peek of what was on your mind that gave birth to this wonderful book.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for that opening. And I can't remember what I said to that question last time I was on. It was a while ago. You can compare and contrast. But I think what I would focus on this time, and John, you might want to say a bit about then the book from that as well. But by all means, it'd be great to hear your view on what coaching done well looks like, sounds like, feels like. I think it's such a great opener for me, and it links to the book and the idea of growth talk. And we've not done the little plug, shameless plug. There it is. And Jim's got a copy there in his hands. It's about showing up. It's about showing up in ways that best serve the thinking and progress of the person on the other side of us. And if you're in a formal coaching setting, that's you being coach. If you're a peer, a colleague, if you're a leader or a line manager, it's in that role, but it's also showing up in those conversations and interactions in ways that best serve the thinking and progress of that other person. My good friend Jason Booton and I have done a bit of thinking. You'll know Jason as well, I'm sure. He adds in the word purpose in there, which I think is a great addition. It's supporting the thinking, purpose and progress of that individual. And at its essence, I think that's what a coaching approach and formal coaching are all about. There's a lot in that, how you show up though, and what goes on in that space. We'll maybe say a bit more about that. Yeah. John, what do you think in terms of, and then maybe a bit about the genesis of the book?
Yeah, looks interesting because you kind of went to a micro lens on that, Chris, and thought about the actual kind of coaching interaction. I actually went to a more macro, and I thought about what's happening when a school's maybe doing coaching well. So, I mean, there's more to say on all this, I'm sure about it. I thought of two words. I thought clarity. People were clear on just what the coaching involved. And I thought about alignment, that there was a level of common commitment to what coaching was about. So there were two words that came to mind. I'm sure there's more you could say, but that may be helpful to just get started.
Lovely, lovely. If I could follow up with a question, then we'll have you respond and get Shane in here. This idea of showing up, I just love that idea. And you write about a coaching way of being, and you say that recognizing the fuzzy nature of this concept, Christian Van Nieuwenburg describes a coaching way of being as an ongoing journey and suggests that it is not learned and developed in the same way as skills and techniques. Could you folks say a little bit more about that?
Okay, so yeah, I mean, Christian is the expert in that idea of coaching way of being and building in a whole lot of theory there as well. But I think when we've looked at that idea of showing up and operating in conversations that intentionally and in a discerning way, I'm really thinking about what you need from me right now, Jim. So it might be in the corridor, it might be informal coaching, it might be in a meeting. And part of that is, or a default part of that is a way of being. And part of that way of being is curiosity, not judgment. It's confidence that I can help you get somewhere in a particular way. It's humility. It's consciously managing my own voice. All sorts of things going on there, and more. That's a kind of default part for me. But the other part of it is a kind of shifting stance. Is a word that I would use in there. Is that in terms of what you need from me, you need that core kind of set of that way of being, coach-like way of being. But I need to operate in certain ways in the conversation. So the other part of it is what I do in response to that. So that's part of that showing up. It might be a question. It might be a silence. It might be a particular type of question. It might be playing something back to you as a paraphrase or a summary statement. And that might depend on the context for the conversation as well. So that showing up is a very intentional, and you're right, practice thing that you can grow and become more conscious of over time. And it's those kind of dispositions that are more the way of being, and the language moves, if you want to use Ron Richards' language in there as well. He talks about language moves and cultures of thinking. That's what we're doing all the time as conversation leaders.
John, what's on your mind?
Yeah, look, just to add a little bit there, I think the original phrase "way of being" was a Carl Rogers phrase, and it was Christian who kind of just adapted that for the coaching context. And it was all about just who you are and the sense of character and motivation and commitment and those things that are a little bit harder, if you like, to learn as skills. That's kind of what we're trying to get to there, and that coaching way of being can in many ways cover a multitude of sins, if I can use that phrase, in that if people really sense who you are and they're there for them in the way Chris has been talking about, you may not be the most perfect listener or ask the most perfect question, but that will come through in a way that connects with the person that you're coaching and working with, and that's a positive thing.
Shane, what's your take so far on this great opening?
I am scribbling down because I'm, as always, learning a lot from you both. Also, by the way, sorry for the tech issues for those people who were tuning in at first. I think it's, Chris, you shouldn't be hearing an echo
anymore.
now.
That's gone. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, it was my bad. It was me not putting my headphones on. So we can definitely blame me. I'm just thinking authenticity is coming to me the most from what you said about connection and authenticity. And that almost like what I like about what you're saying is there are lots of ways where we can try as we want to mechanize or codify the coaching process. And there are many ways which it can be. And obviously growth coaching is a codification in a way. But what you're speaking to is that actually, you could do that a lot. But if you haven't, what's most important is that way of being, that showing up fully and being authentic. And that even without a fully codified approach, I guess, you are still present in that conversation, and that's almost more important in a way.
I think that's what makes it that, I don't know if default's the right word, but it's as we were thinking about that idea of, or when I've talked about stance in there, the stance has two parts to it. One is my how I operate, more of me, less of me, what kind of skill I draw on. But the kind of core part of it, you're not going to be more humble or less humble, or more judgmental or less judgmental. That has to be a stable thing that you work on. All of us are different as humans, and we work on different aspects of that. Some comes more naturally than others. But and inside all of that is emotional intelligence, and that self-awareness and awareness of others. So I think that was what we realized, is it's not I can now be a bit more judgmental and a bit less. It's a core. It's that kind of default component of stance, if you like. It's a helpful one. But sometimes it's fuzzy too. I think that's what we were kind of getting at. Yeah.
Yeah. I think just a phrase or two on that. I think sometimes I did hear someone say once, I'm not sure who I could attribute this to, but said that teachers are sometimes well-intentioned fixers, and we want to kind of sort out the issue and move on to the next thing and so on. So I think if that's the kind of stance or a way of being you bring to your interaction, that'll get picked up. And so I think if we can kind of monitor and be aware of those sort of patterns that we might have, that's kind of what we're trying to talk about, I think, with that way of being phrase. But it is a little bit elusive, and it's a little bit harder to kind of pin down than becoming a better listener. That's challenging enough as well.
Agreed. I really like that chapter on other initiated conversations. Got a minute? It resonated with me, with the Heath brothers, the power of moments, and took the idea of teachable moments into coachable moments, and being more intentional about what seizing and inviting and celebrating and furthering the idea of coachable moments. Could you share what was on your mind when you intentionally included the idea and ideals of this? And could you speak to what dancing around the framework might look like and feel like?
Sure. I'm happy to kind of just make some initial comments there. I think that you've landed on something that's pretty central to that whole new book there, Jim. I think it came about from sensing that a lot of things we were learning and teaching in formal coaching contexts, how to listen well, how to ask questions, how to be there and present, and how to have a goal focus, and all the things that might be part of what we bring to a formal coaching interaction where we sit down, take notes, or whatever, schedule an appointment time. A lot of those things can carry over. A lot of those skills and approaches can carry over into these more incidental interactions. And in many ways, that's where school leaders live a lot, in those interactions that are not scheduled, not formal. And so we just thought that this was an opportunity to bring the best of formal kind of coaching as we saw it into those informal interactions. And not only that, we were seeing from the organizational literature that the sort of things that we were suggesting might be useful to bring into those informal actions were actually showing up as a good way to lead in the way that we talk about human intensive systems. So that's a longer answer there, but it was sort of those things coming together, and we thought this could be a really practical way to bring that together for school leaders.
Yeah. I think, just to add to that, Jim, I think John's right. It's a central premise here that there are so many more of those opportunities as a leader at any level, whether you're a designated leader with a team and line management responsibilities, or whether there's a more distributed kind of culture in the school. That idea of spotting those moments where you could act in a particular way using coach-like skills to support the thinking of your colleague. How empowering is that? How powerful is that? And how culture shaping is that? Whereas a lot of us, as you alluded to earlier, John, and it's not just educators, but I think educators maybe in particular have that tendency towards advice giving and fixing. And sometimes when we think we're time poor in those rushed moments or in the corridor or whatever, that's the instant reaction, So this is about being more discerning and intentional, just operating slightly differently, that puts them more in the driving seat than you. So we've started to talk about being a more effective conversation leader and seeing the other person as our conversation partner. The only caveat I would put over all of that concept, Jim, is that we're not saying every conversation is now a coaching conversation. We all know that drives people crazy.
Coaching.
Exactly. This is not sneaky or I prefer Jedi coaching. It's not that mind tricks that we're teaching you. That we've all experienced those conversations where you walk away from it and you think, hang on a minute, something's just been done to me. If it feels like that, we're doing it wrong. The way of being is out the window. It's manipulation, So it's in service of that person's thinking, and you've got their back and their best intentions and so on. So there's a subtlety to it, but it doesn't mean every conversation is now a coachable moment, because some aren't. And in leadership, some need clear, unambiguous sharing of information, or there is a right way to do things here. And it might need to be a bit more of you in that conversation, but often there are opportunities to support the learning of that person. And it's about the discernment. In some ways, John, I think you said this when we talked about this at length, and I'm cautious saying this. In some ways, it's harder. I don't know whether harder is the right word than formal coaching. Formal coaching, and you guys do this too. You've got time bound. It's scheduled. There's real role clarity. There's expectations. That gives the coach a bit of security and predictability too. And I think doing this in the moment is, I don't know if harder is the right word still. I'm still wrestling with that, John. It's certainly more nuanced and intentional.
Yeah, I would add to that too. I think you landed on the kind of minute thing there, Jim. And one thing I think we do want to say about that is if we can be more intentional and clear about what we might be doing in this moment that presents itself, there is an opportunity for significant progress and transformation even to happen in a short time. And I think that's not always something we come to it with. We sometimes, and maybe this is something for me, but we need a long time to make a big impact. And I think that's something we'd want to at least challenge. So that's what we think about in terms of the got a minute idea, I think, as well.
Shane's written this great book with Ephraim about change. So I just leads me into this, that you folks write about a continuum of conversations where the coachee conversation partner becomes a customer for change. Someone who is a result of the conversation now sees a compelling need for something to change and wants to do something about it. I like all three of you to chime into this idea of customer for change and how important that is, and what does that look like in a coaching conversation? How do we get there?
I suppose the first thing to say is to attribute that to who we've quoted there. So that's Mark McErgo and Paul Jackson, two world leaders in solution-focused coaching in that world. And John, you've known both of them a lot longer than me. But that phrase, a customer for change, is just such a compelling phrase. And you're absolutely right. And you've paraphrased their paraphrase of them, I suppose, that it's one thing to see a compelling need for change. There's the other thing is, and you're willing to do something about it. Often in life, in work, you go, oh yeah, I know I need to change that, but carry on regardless, carry on and drink tea, carry on and hope for the best. Actually being willing to do something about it, it really gets you in that place. When we spot a learning conversation or an opportunity to support a learning conversation, often that person is right there at that point of wanting something to be different. And you operating in a more coach-like way helps them move on that, from I think John, our old strapline is still appropriate, from good intentions to great results. There's a good intention there. How do you help them move, however small, John, you might want to say more about that the source of that that statement. Is such a compelling statement for me.
Yeah, it was. And Mark McErgo's work has been quite influential in that for us. And I think, it goes back to something you raised earlier, Jim, when you talk about dancing around growth or moving around any kind of linear model that we might have. And, the growth model we've used a fair bit in our work. But I get to the W part of that is what will you do? And so I think that's quite a confronting question at times, because you mean we're not just talking about this topic. I got to do something about it. I think that's where we're kind of getting to with one of the aspects of customer for change. Yeah, there is a need to make even just a small step response, but that's going to be important in this. And we're actually, yes, this is an issue, and yes, I'm prepared to do something about it.
Shane, what's on your mind with all this?
Yeah, well, I love what you've both just said. I also love that phrase, and thinking about. I like how you just framed it on the what will you do, because I think so many of our conversations sometimes, and maybe this is what causes some people to be uneasy about coaching, is because sometimes people have been in coaching conversations where they feel it's just an exploration all the time, and we're not getting anywhere fast enough, and it's not got enough of the will part of it, which I think is so important.
First thing to say about this is it's become a kind of an organizer for the whole book, really, in terms of what it's trying to do is capture the range of conversational contexts where we can be more intentional conversation leaders. And the horizontal axis, first of all, was the first part of this continuum of conversations that some are very much led and initiated by our partner. Some are, if you're a leader, very necessarily led or initiated, or there's much more of them in the conversation, their knowledge, their expertise, their agenda, and so on. And it's a continuum, so there's a whole range. And then as we explored the different types of conversations through which we lead, we realized that some of those happen in much more formal ways or formal contexts, or have a formal process around them, a kind of mandated expectation or an agenda or so on. And lots of them happen in very informal or less formal contexts, in the car park, at a sporting event, in the corridor, you name it, and around the work. And as we've used this with school leaders and kind of tested this framework, we've realized it almost becomes a heat map. So one way that we suggest that people look at this is, as a leader or in your role, go back over your calendar for the last, just mentally back over your calendar for the last month or the last term, and write down on a sticky note every conversation you had that was not in your calendar. You can have the ones that are in your calendar, they're there in your Outlook calendar or whatever. But all the interactions you had where there was a conversation that you were either someone else came to you and said, have you got a minute? Or you initiated, or you were in a team meeting, or it was a parent conference, or whatever it was, and stick them where you think they were on that map. And it starts to become a very visible heat map of where you're interacting most. And depending on your role in a school principal is not spending a lot of time in formal coaching in that top left quadrant. A dedicated coach is. A middle leader might be, depending on the situation. Certain leaders will be leading formal one-to-one and group conversations, team meetings, things like that. But then what we found, and as John said, this is the main bulk of the book here, is actually a lot of the work that a leader is doing in leading conversations is in that bottom half, below the horizontal axis, the bottom half of that map. The challenge we have is it's a dynamic concept, because when people start to do that, they say, and as I'm doing on the screen now, I can't help talk about this, but weave back and forward. It started there, but then it's moving there. Or I know it's starting there with me initiating it, but I really want them to be doing most of the thinking. So eventually it'll be more about them and what they want and their goals. Or it's other initiated and you realize it needs to be a bit more of you in the conversation because they're really stuck or whatever it happens to be. So it's dynamic. And the challenge is, as soon as we put it on a slide like this, or we put it in a book, it becomes static and it looks like 4 buckets that you put your conversations in. So it's not that. And the commentary around that is very much about, think about those continua. To what degree do you want this to be more or less of that, or more or less of that? And it's become a useful framework for people to make sense of the conversations that they have and the interactions. And it's almost their conversational contexts through which they do their work, or they lead, or they influence, and so on. So that's it. And I think I probably change that commentary every time I talk to it, John. I don't know how that one was.
Yeah, I mean that's just it's an organizing framework. I think that's a good phrase you used earlier, because and we understand it's more complex than this. And these 2x2 matrix have their place and help us to think about how we might structure things. But they can be seen to be oversimplifying some of the things we're dealing with. But the book is really focused on those bottom half conversations and just how we can help leaders make better use of those moments, as you said earlier, Jim. Just to pick up maybe on one point that Shane raised earlier about the what will you do thing. That notion of progress was something that really became important here, that being seen to make progress, to move things forward. And if it is something that we're just exploring without a sense of moving forward on it, then we lose an opportunity there, because I'm referring now to a work, the Progress Principle. I've forgotten the authors who really said that's one of the most significant things that affects what they called people's inner work life, this sense of progress. And as leaders, I think that's kind of what we want to do. We've all been in meetings that have just gone on and on forever. Or where did we really get to out as a result of that? And it's quite demotivating. So I think coaching, when we're looking at kind of helping people move, and that's just small steps, not big action plans that are going to stop us from moving, but just small step progress is a real key in these even short, informal conversations as well.
Lovely. I know we're getting short on time, so before I hand it over to Shane and myself to wrap it up, heartfelt thanks, obviously heartfelt thanks. But final question that I have, and just thank you for your contributions here, is what do you hope for? The people who buy this book, who read this book and take it into their lives and into their world, what are your hopes?
Go on, John. Go for it.
Yeah, I think we've really tried to make this practical, Jim, so that one of the big values for us has always been anything we do, you can do something with this the next day if you're in a workshop and whatever. So if people are reading this book can get some practical value, that means those moments that appear in their work week, work day, can be treated a little bit differently in a way that engages people, makes some serious attempt to progress the issues and challenges that are on their mind, then I think that would be a good thing for me to see come from what we've written here. This can make something immediately useful for you and immediately practicable.
Yeah, completely agree with that, John. I'm going to go grand and finish with a grand ideal. I honestly think when we take to this idea of being better conversation leaders, and our final chapter is what if everyone became a more effective conversation leader in a school community? That's culture shaping. That starts to be more about how we talk and what we talk about around here, how we interact. And that has an influence fundamentally on relationships. So I hope that it's making a contribution in that space too for the people who it really resonates with.
Oh, well, just lovely. Yeah, thank you so much. Shane, your thoughts as we wrap up this wonderful show?
And it's now got me wondering. I mean, that quadrant, I think I can see why it would be a bit of a light bulb moment for many leaders and to evaluate where most of your conversations sit. And now it's got me wondering if so many of those conversations sit in that informal space or however you would define it. And yet you see many leaders I talk to who are almost doing formal coach training. Now I'm wondering, is our energy better placed on some of the ideas that you're exploring in your book on creating that coaching way of being? Is that going to give us more bang for buck in education than formal programs? I don't know. It's just a question buzzing around my mind now.
Another conversation. We'll have that one in Thailand in a couple of weeks.
This idea of coachable moment. I mean, this is an aha for me. It's a eureka. We've talked about teachable moments all the time, but now to focus on this idea of coachable moments. So what do they look like? How do we invite them? How do we nurture them? What do we do with them? Among many, many other things. Folks, buy the book. Buy the book. I mean, this should be in everybody's library. You guys, you had me at hello. Okay. You had me in hello with this, but this is a valuable contribution
Thank you.
to our work because this idea of coaching done well, we say three things about coaching done well: to advance student success and well-being, to give the coachee a place to do their best thinking, and that this really cheerleads that, to give the coachee a place to do their best thinking. But this macro idea, which happened today, which happened this morning, this afternoon, this evening, and on this journey together in this coaching way of leading to become better versions of ourselves. And John and Chris and Shane, you helped do that for me and with me. So thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Well, thank you both for joining us. This has been an absolutely cracking conversation. And I think Ruth, who joins us, she's so powerful and inspiring to listen.
Thank you.
Which is, I think, incredible. It's wonderful to have a community with us following along the journey. Jim and I are really fortunate to get so many messages along the way. We have these amazing chats with these amazing guests and people take a lot from it. So please do keep sending in those messages. Let us know how you found this conversation with John and Chris. I know Ruth found it powerful. Thank you, Emma and Ruth, by the way. They were the ones who helped us sort those tech issues at the start and identified some stuff behind the scenes. So how about that for the power of community?
Brilliant.
Super late for you, John. Incredibly.
Thank you.
And feeling incredibly grateful. Thank you so much.
Likewise.
To be here.
Been a joy. Thanks, folks.
Thanks so much, folks. I hope our paths cross again one day. Thank you so much. And thank you
Certainly
to
will.
our listeners out there.
Take care. See you next time, everyone.
All right. Cheers.